Do you remember a few years ago when Sandra Bullock starred in a movie where she was running around the city but really couldn't figure out where she was going because she was blindfolded? Well, now Mario Casas is doing the exact same thing, but in Spain. Bird Box Barcelona is a kind of sequel, or maybe it's a parallel story that's now on Netflix. But should you watch? After an entity of mysterious origin annihilates the world's population, causing those who observe it to take their lives, Sebastián and his daughter begin their own great adventure of survival in Barcelona. So the whole premise of the movie, if you've never seen the first Bird Box, is that unseen entities or beings or spirits or whatever decimate humans by causing people to unalive themselves if they've had their eyes open in the presence of the things. Now, this movie follows sort of the same premise as that first one, where we have a group of people not only trying to survive, but also to get to a place of safety. And ideally, it's a place that has other survivors as well. But this isn't just a rehashing of the first movie with a Spanish lead. The story takes a somewhat different tack in how it uses Mario Casas' character of Sebastián. Now, I'm not going to say the specifics surrounding him because they're spoilers, but suffice it to say, there's a brand new complication that arises, and I appreciated then the use of special effects to enhance and complement those story elements. Now, the entities, they're still invisible, but we can always tell when they approach because whatever's on the ground begins to rustle and then levitate, and that's sort of then followed by this ominous sound. Sometimes it could be screams or shouts, other times whispers. Sometimes it's just this building growl that lets us know something bad's about to happen. When the story starts off, we're in the present, but then we're shown multiple flashbacks throughout the story to fill us in on what happened to the world and the people, with a special focus on Sebastián and his family. And we get to meet his daughter, who is an integral part of his motivations, as well as his wife, too. Now, there is decent tension that's created through this, and even though we know some of what will happen, the flashbacks still hold a little anxiety because we don't know how or when certain actions occur that then affect the characters. Now, one large thing the movie has going against it is that not only does this feel very familiar, despite new additions to the plot and unique complexities, but a lot of the story just comes about very abruptly, rushing into certain action sequences without context, and then making for kind of just this whiplash scenario where we watch something happen out of the blue that can be shocking, and then we don't find out why until later. Even then, some of the explanations, they're saved for much, much later. There was also a pretty big lack of connection with the characters. Now, I was starting to feel something for Sebastián through the flashbacks, but then we're thrown back into the present, and that sympathy, it just gets overridden by the actions. I wanted more time with the characters that we're supposed to become attached to. And I know there's some of them are there just so that we can begin to feel something for them, but given the state of the world, they're not going to last too long. And those surprises are great for the story because it does set up situations where I want to become attached, but I'm fearful that they're going to die. Now, the movie's a little under 2 hours, but the pacing felt uneven within that time. Sometimes it was like we were sprinting through the scenes, not only high on adrenaline just due to the impending threats, but also because we have quick vignette-type action sequences, and then moments of rest, and then back to the frenzy. And mostly through this, there's very little character growth or even development. We just watch the characters react by waving their arms at invisible piñatas or holding their ears and screaming. And it becomes repetitive, but in quick succession. So each scene is a rinse and repeat of the previous one, but at a fast rate. And then when we do get times of quiet, or at least maybe just calmer situations, the dialogue is thin and plain. And then it's tired because it's not bringing anything new to the table. And as with most post-apocalyptic stories, some of the people, they're just bad, if not even worse, than the entities. And we do get a baddie in this, but they were so ill-defined and then just run-of-the-mill that it was sad. I mean, the pursuit by the entities combined with Sebastián's arc, I thought was enough. But then to add in human elements without a lot of development on that angle, it just felt forced and awkwardly placed within the story. The biggest positive in this for me is the introduction of the complication that's created for Sebastián. It adds a layer of difficulty and uncertainty to just everything, and I appreciate that, and I was enjoying it. Now, I do wish, though, that I felt more attached to the character, and he wasn't somebody that I was drawn to, despite enjoying his story arc. And then one of the largest bummers of this movie is that it feels like a total setup for a sequel. Like everything we just watched was only in preparation for another chapter in this, and not necessarily jumping to a new part of the globe, but just continuing the Barcelona story, which then could connect to other parts of the world. Now, honestly, this was a little better than I was expecting, but then also a little worse in certain areas. And as I said multiple times, Sebastián's story is highly interesting and it can be engaging, but the character is directed and written in a way that can counteract any building connection. Mario Casas, he's fine in the role, but I don't think he brings anything special. He emotes well, and he portrays a scared father in a convincing way, but he wasn't riveting within his portrayal. I like Georgina Campbell as she brings just this level-headedness and sensibility, and then also warmth to the cast. She's a little endearing, but she's also mostly a stranger, so that connection to her is fairly weak, just like it is with Sebastián. So overall, Bird Box Barcelona offers a different perspective and spin to a world we've already been introduced to. As an action film, it's halfway decent, delivering sequences that are exciting and sometimes tense. But for the dramatic element, it falls short, lacking a lot of character development as well as creating a conflicted view towards the main protagonist. The storytelling suffers from pacing unevenness and ultimately feels like a vehicle for a coming sequel rather than focusing on a narrative that delivers the goods and then leaves room for more. While this isn't terrible, it's not great either. There's no sex or nudity, a lot of profanity, and a bunch of brutal violence, most of that centering around self-harm. I give Bird Box Barcelona 2.5 out of 5 couches. So are you a fan of post-apocalyptic movies? Do you have a favorite if you can't say Mad Max Fury Road? For me, I think I'm going to go with The Book of Eli, but let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.